Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and today I'm doing, not actually sure what to call this video, another bookish sort of, I'm doing the tarot readathon, so I guess it's an update. It's not really a vlog, it's an update of some sort. I'll link Deja and Noelle down below. They're the ones who created this, so you can see their channels. And they've come up with 78 prompts for each of the tarot cards. And I did a video earlier, last week. I think it came out on Friday. I can't remember now. It's Sunday. And I've no concept of time because I've just been reading constantly, which is fun. But basically, I think I left off with the books I'd read from Tunisia and Brazil, which is pretty cool. Oh yeah, and I was going to read By the Sea as an audiobook, and Les Enfants, the cats. So, oh, and these are the tarot cards I've been using. I'm all scatterbrained today, apparently. But this is the Maria Tarot. It's an Italian deck. Look at that. It's beautiful. I love it. It's a Thoth clone. And it's, yeah, one of my favorites. I'm switching this week to a different, I think the Lioness Oracle Tarot. But this is what I used for the first couple of weeks. So for each of these cards, I picked a book. Week 1, week 2 was better. Yeah. Anyway, that's that. So for By the Sea by Abdulrazak Gurnah, basically it jumps back and forth in time on, what's that island called? Zanzibar, just off Tanzania. Tanzania? I don't know how you say that properly, actually. It's Eastern Africa, though, southeast, or east-southeast. But it was a really good book. It was kind of sad. It wasn't exactly cheerful. It didn't have a sad ending, necessarily. But it was about two men whose lives intertwine. They're different generations, but their families' lives have intertwined somewhat in Tanzania, and there are, knock-on effects from choices that other people have made in their families that they now have to deal with, or that they've made and they now have to deal with, and they've both ended up in England as refugees, with more or less success. I won't tell you the outcome, but so it's not heavy on plot exactly. Basically it's a character study of these two men and their relationship, and the things they've lost in their journeys, and kind of how they come to some sort of resolution with each other. And then the other book after that I read was Les Enfants, the Khat. I couldn't get into this one. It's by an author from Djibouti, which is northeast Africa by like Ethiopia and Somalia. And it's one of the only books by a woman. I think it's the only book by a woman that I could find in Canada in either French or English. It's really hard to find female authors from Djibouti. Yeah, it was so-so. I didn't really like it. I don't want to be like insulting or anything, but I couldn't care much about the characters. Like so khat, if you don't know, is a drug that if you only take it now and again in its natural form, like it's a plant, then it's like caffeine. But if you come to depend on it, it has all sorts of effects, hallucinations, lethargy, even death. I think it can cause heart attacks or something. Anyway, apparently it's caused all sorts of societal issues in Djibouti where people are addicted to it and have been using it for ages and don't seem to do much else. At least in this book, they don't do much else. Like, the men in this book don't come off well. They're pretty useless all around. The women do all the work. They go to work, they come home, they do all the work in the home, they raise all the kids. The men don't seem to do much, which maybe is how it is, I don't know. And so this woman finds some sort of solace in religion, in Islam in her case. And those sections I didn't mind. They were kind of interesting. But the sections of people just sitting around being lethargic were kind of boring, and I just couldn't get into it. Yeah, oh well. Not every book is a winner, I guess. The next one, though, was quite good. This is She Plays with the Darkness by Zakes. I don't actually know if that's how you say that. I'm just doing my best here. He's from South Africa, so I actually thought he was from Lesotho because he worked in Lesotho and he grew up there, but he was born in South Africa and I think he lives there now. So he's been back and forth between the two countries. So this was my book for Lesotho, but it could be for South Africa as well because Lesotho is landlocked by South Africa, and they have a complicated relationship. So there's some politics in here that was kind of interesting, I guess. But the main draw for me was this character, Dakosha. She was fantastic. I loved her. Her twin, I can't remember what his name was, Readathon, was also kind of interesting, I guess. He was not a moral character, though. Like, his sense of ethics was not the same as her sense of ethics, let's say. And she's wilder, and he's more driven to like material success in the big city. So their lives veer apart quite dramatically. But it's really good. The ending was a bit sudden, I felt. It just sort of ended, and I wasn't convinced that was really an ending, but okay. But other than that, it was quite good. Also, I really like this painting on the cover, which apparently was done by his son. So yeah, that's that. And then I read The Blue Sky by Galsan to Tschinag. I'm not sure. He's Mongolian. He's lived a very interesting life. I might read more of these books. They're kind of novelized memoir. So he's Tuvan, who mostly live in Siberia, but some of them live in Mongolia and China, and he lives in Mongolia. And he learned German, went to the university in Germany, became, I think, a writer there, also taught at a university there, but now, or afterwards, I don't know if he still is alive, he might be, lives in Mongolia as a shaman and herder. So he said had a super interesting life, but this is from when Mongolia was more nomadic. Maybe they still are, I don't know. But his siblings go off to university, and it's alluded to that he will at the end. But yeah, it's really interesting. His relationships with the animals are kind of no less important, especially with his dog. Are no less important than his relationships with people. He has a grandmother that their family has sort of adopted as his grandmother. And yeah, it's super interesting. It's a novel, but it's a memoir. Like, it's a fictionalized version of this man's life. It was very cool. And then I read Last Night in Nuuk by Niviaq Korneliussen, which is an author from Greenland. So that was fun. It's a good book. I don't think I'm the target audience for this book, but it's a good, it's not a bad book. It's maybe early days in her writing career, I don't know, because it maybe could have been polished a bit more, but it was an interesting story. And the construction of the book was kind of interesting. So there are 5 characters in Denmark, most of them queer, which is always cool. So these are the five characters, and then each of them get their own chapter. So the first one is Fia, and then the timelines in some of the chapters overlap somewhat, so you get different people's perspectives on the same events, which is interesting. And then there are a bunch of texts. Particularly in the latter half of the book, there's a lot that's text messages and whatnot. And yeah, I don't know, it was like, I'm glad I read it. I'm not going to keep it. Somebody else can read it. Somebody else probably will like it more than I do, because, like, it's a good book. It's not a bad book. I'm glad I read it, but it's not going to be a reread or anything. And then the last one I listened to just today was Queen of the Conquered by Kacen Callender. So she's from the Virgin Islands, and the premise of the book was interesting. It's sort of colonialism with, I don't know, magical twists. So it is a fantasy, and it wasn't a bad book, but I don't think I'm the target audience for this one. These were from my Read Around the World picks because they were the easiest for me to get a hold of, but maybe other people would like them more. I don't know. This is I think it's more YA, young adult fantasy. And I don't know, the characters are not, for the most part, very likable, so I wasn't particularly interested in them. And there's a lot of palace intrigue sort of stuff going on, which is very not my thing. But if it's your thing, go to town. So that's that. And then this week I've started reading Blindness by Jose Saramago from Portugal as an audiobook. And then, oh, I forgot my book. One moment. And then I'm reading Traverser de la Mangrove by Maryse Condé, or Crossing the Mangrove. So she is also a Nobel Prize winner, actually, from Guadeloupe. It's a beautiful book so far. I'm really enjoying it. I'm trying to read it in French, but her French writing is vastly superior to my understanding of French writing. So I'm only about 3 chapters in, because when there are things I don't quite understand and it impacts my ability to follow the story, then I read it in English. And actually I just kept reading then and read one of the chapters in English and then reread it in French. So I'll probably go back and forth between the two just to make sure, because I really do want to understand this one. Like, I want to use it for French learning. And so for some books, if I don't catch everything, that's fine. Like Les Enfants de Khat, I wasn't all that bothered if I missed things, because I did, because it just wasn't interesting to me. This is very interesting, and I think her writing is beautiful, and the translation is beautiful, actually. Whoever did this translation, the English writing is also beautiful. So that's a win, because you don't always find that. Richard Philcox. Interesting. But yeah, so basically this man has died. That's not a spoiler. He dies in the first, like, 2 pages. And then each of the characters whose lives interacted with him get a chapter. So dusk is when he's discovered, and then throughout the night, everybody gets a chapter, and I'm only on Mira at the moment. But it sort of intertwines their stories with his story and with each other's a little bit. So at the end of this chapter, it talks about how he knew Mira, and then it goes into Mira's story with the deceased man's story. So yeah, really enjoying that so far. Oh, and I'm trying to listen to The Two Towers in French on Audible as well. It's going. I know the story well enough, so if I miss words in French, it's fine. And I can't listen to it on 1.5 speed or 2 times speed. Sometimes in English I do that, especially if the narrator is really slow. But in French I cannot do that yet. So anyway, that's that. And then I do have a few more books lined up to read next. So, oh yeah, so this is the audiobook one that I'm listening to. This is the other. This is Blindness. There are a couple other, no, this is Blindness. This is Crossing the Mangrove. And this is another audiobook. These are actually all audiobooks that I'm gonna get. And then these are books that I want to read. But there are some reading around the world type books that I want to order probably tomorrow. So that'll be fun too. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.